Okay, so I really want to talk to you about gut health, and because you've done neuroscience, you've done psychology, so even more interesting. How does food affect the way you feel, your mental, emotional state of mind? Is there any correlation?
Definitely. Look, the human body is one unit. Okay, it's fundamentally just one unit, and everything is very interconnected. And we as human beings have broken it up into neuro and musculoskeletal and gut as separate things. They are all one big integrated unit, and everything works in accordance with each other. That said, our gut has an entire universe within it. So our gut is our second brain.
Yes.
Our brain has multi-million trillion neurons that connect and that basically decide what's happening in the body, and they pass on the messages. And that's what neuroscience is how all these connections in your brain make you who you are. They set your mood, they decide your personality. And similarly, now in our gut, which is our second brain, there are trillions of bacteria that live in the gut.
Yeah.
And we have more bacterial cells than human cells in our body. Like, we're basically just a bundle of bacteria. Their job is to basically make the most of your nutrients that come into your system and to allocate them well. It's like a symbiotic relationship that has formed over generations. So similar to the immune system, you can switch on and you can switch off your immune system by things that you do, right? Your body has systems like your gut bacteria and your immune system both. Things you eat, things you do to it will basically allow it to do its work or block it from doing its work. So with the gut, when we eat certain foods that are harming our gut bacteria, they are not able to work correctly. They are not able to digest the food properly. They are not able to suck nutrition out of food. They start to play up and give you very uncomfortable feelings, and you get a larger amount of bad bacteria, the ones that cause a lot of issues, the ones that call leaky gut that kind of like do not protect you from the food that you're eating and help you get the maximum out of it. And you kill off the good bacteria. So it's very important to basically maintain a balance of your good and bad bacteria. You want more good bacteria gut, only because they can do their job. So like when you feed, a lot of people say fiber is really good for you, and people think that, fiber is good for you because it helps you digest food. But why? Because the gut need to eat the gut bacteria. They live on fiber. That's one of their foods. So you're feeding the good things in your body to allow them to do their job. That's how you feed. So I think that gut bacteria, like the health of gut bacteria is obviously, and there's a lot of science out there as to why it's interconnected. And the fundamental explanation is that everything in your body is one single unit. You cannot have a bad gut and be in a good mood.
Yeah.
It's just the same. It's a science because your body exists in states, right? Generally, if you look at fight or flight, right? You are in a state where and this is evolutionary and we can't help it, these are like things wired into our brain. If you're in a state where you're afraid of something, you're in a state of fear and you need to kind of run from something, your entire body is in that state. You're mentally depressed, you're not able to digest food at that time, your face becomes red, your eyes your pupils dilate. It's a constant state through the body. It's not that your skeletal system is going through something while your mental system is going through something else. So similarly, there are systems in place that everything will always happen in sync, right? Now, when we view our gut bacteria, the good and bad bacteria, there is so much science out there to individual types of bacteria and how you feed them, and your probiotics, your prebiotics, which have your fiber. These are all things that are fermented foods. Why do we have so much of this stuff? Because it feeds the good bacteria. So if you just imagine your Mahabharata or any classical war going on in your gut all the time between the good guys and the bad guys in your gut, you want the good guys to be stronger. You need to strengthen them. You need to give them reinforcements so they can deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. Yeah. The minute the bad bacteria start to grow, you start to have issues like so the gut, why is it so sensitive? Because you're taking things from outside and putting it into your system, right? Your gut is a lining that once your food goes into your stomach and goes down into your gut, which is your intestines, there has to be a very strong border between what's going out into your bloodstream, right? The gut bacteria, that they form that protection. They are an army that protects your lining of your gut from any of this unwanted stuff to go out into your bloodstream and rather expel it from your body instead, because that's the whole reason the human body was designed that way.
Yeah.
Now we start to mess with that. And one of the things we see is leaky gut, where things are going from your gut, undigested food particles, things that aren't supposed to be there, into your bloodstream. Now, your bloodstream doesn't want this stuff there. It needs blood, it needs to do its work. So massive amounts of inflammation get caused in these different parts of your body. Things are flowing out of your gut that shouldn't be being sent into the bloodstream. That wall is broken. You know, it's like a leakage that's happening.
How does someone know that they have leaky gut? Is it excessive bowels, or like how would you know?
It symptomizes very differently in different people. From me, I feel that people who are very, very sensitive to a larger variety of foods tend to have some damage to their gut lining. Because
Okay.
you shouldn't be that sensitive to so many foods. Your whole body doesn't have to react to everything you eat, because your body will expel it if it's not meant for your body.
Yeah.
So for me, I can tell when you have people who eat anything and they get either severely constipated, or they get a diarrhea, or they are perpetually feeling bloated. That's another sign of, because the bad bacteria are overworking.
Yeah.
So it symptomizes very differently in different cases. But overall, it is that the gut lining has been compromised.
Mm.
And the gut bacteria is there to kind of keep that environment healthy, that ecosystem healthy. And when these kind of food particles and nutrients leak outside into the bloodstream, you get massive amounts of inflammation. And when you get inflammation, the body is not able to do its job properly. So if you have inflammation at a site where cell division is happening, which is happening all day, that might encourage a cancerous cell forming.
Yeah.
When you get inflammation at a site in your bloodstream, what happens to go and solve inflammation? Cholesterol goes there to go and put the inflammation out, because it's like it's kind of like the firefighters that stop a fire. Now, when you get cholesterol going to stop that fire, you get tons of cholesterol. Every time you have inflammation, cholesterol goes to kind of try and calm it down, to try and solve it. Eventually, if you keep getting inflammation through, poor gut health or many other things you can do to get inflammation, but poor gut health is one of them, your cholesterol builds up in your arteries and it stops the blood flow, and that leads to cardiac disease, heart attack. So everything is linked to what's going on with your digestion and food system.
Yeah.
There is a direct link to heart attacks because of this pathway. And there's a direct link to cancer. There's a direct link to mental health. So many times, I've not done this in detail, but I know for a fact that there were certain cases of depression and bipolar disorder and things where people were really like not able to mentally cope, and these can be fixed by just feeding the correct bacteria in the gut. You feed the correct bacteria in the gut, everything balances out, your hormones send out a better signal to the body, and it's just gone away. So there's a physiological basis for all of human behavior. It's not as random as we'd like it to be.
Yeah. And a topic that is one that I really like talking about, and I think my friends and family hate me for, is poop, basically, because we really don't talk about this.
Yeah.
But I think it's a beautiful indicator of what's going on, and it tells you so much about your body, right? It can tell you exactly if if you have some infection, if your gut bacteria is not where it should be, whatever, so on and so forth. So like most people in India, I have heard, are chronically constipated, or I know so many people who have, leaky gut or excessive bowels, right? There are people also who need to literally smoke a cigarette before using the toilet in the morning. I know people who don't use the toilet for, for like days together.
Yeah.
What's your thought in terms of how can people manage these excessive bowels, whether it's constipation or whether it is leaky gut or excessively going to the toilet?
Yeah. So like I'm saying, it's again a fundamental thing of the intermediate control mechanism that's already in place being unhealthy. So that is why some people switch between severe constipation, diarrhea. There's no single cure. I mean, obviously you have foods that are kind of going to allow your flow of your bowels to move better. So you have your bananas, you have kind of more food that a lot more fiber that you can put through the system, a lot of water. But these are your basic, kind of like external view things. The fundamental problem when you're constipated or you have diarrhea is your gut is unhealthy.
Yeah.
Your gut bacteria are not able to manage the food passing through it and able to deal with it correctly. So again, it's taking out your sugars. when you have sugar, it's giving your bad gut bacteria a lot of ammo. It's making them stronger. It's making them able to take over better. You're giving them more power. When you have really high carbs, when you have processed food, you are basically empowering the bad gut bacteria and you are destroying your good gut bacteria. So if I'm having like processed food and I'm having tons of sugar and not eating greens and not eating fiber and not eating what I'm supposed to be eating, nothing I take will actually solve the problem, because you're putting things in there that are killing off good bacteria. So then there's everything else will only be a quick fix. In the long term, you have to feed the systems that are there to regulate these things. You don't need to regulate constipation and diarrhea yourself. Your gut bacteria is supposed to do that. You need to empower your gut bacteria to do that and let it do its job.
Do you think, I know you're not a big advocate of supplements, neither am I actually, but what about a probiotic?
So a probiotic is great. A lot of the probiotics you get in the market are mixed with sugar. So again, you're having something.
Oh, they're mixed with sugar.
Yeah.
Okay, so that doesn't that defeat the purpose of like?
Exactly. But that's because people don't understand the purpose. You know, like the purpose of probiotics is to empower your gut bacteria. Now you put sugar in there because you will not buy a product if it tastes like crap. That's the thing. You know, if it tastes bad, if it's not palatable, it does not. No matter how healthy it is, it will not move in the market and people will not buy it. So to make probiotics really tasty, people add sugar in there. So it's just safer to obviously check if you're getting a really ethical source of probiotics, which I don't know about the tablets. I just don't feel them. I prefer the actual genuine probiotics. Better to get them from food. Have your fermented foods. Get into the habit of it, because you also don't want to spoil your body. What a lot of products and a lot of supplements do is they make your body lazy. It's like, look, I'm already getting it from here. Why should I extract it from food? So that's what we tend to do to our body. Like, look, I'm giving you this food in a powder form, so you don't need to do any work in digestion. Just be lazy. So all the digestive enzymes and the things that are there that are supposed to work for us are just pieced out and lazy. They're like, I don't need to do it. I'm getting a powder. Then one day you give it real food and it can't handle that real food. The job of the gut is to extract nutrition from food, whatever it needs. If you start doing that job in a factory and giving it the end product, you're not doing your body a favor. I mean, it's only in really critical situations where people cannot consume calories and people just, for whatever reason, are ill and it's clinical and it's hospital, you have to get something in when you use an IV and you try to put that nutrition in. That's not what needs to come into everyday living.
Yeah. And also it's basically the absorbability of nutrients is much less when you take it through a supplement than you take it through a food, right?
Of course. Like foods are there because again, we don't know what nature intended in that food. Science has only learned very little. So I'll give you an example which I really like because it explains to us how little science knows. And the more you study science, the more you realize how vague it actually is and how little we know. So if you look at breastfeeding and breast milk, right? I think our generation, all of us grew up on formula.
Yeah.
There was a time just before our generation where scientists found that, look, a few people are not able to nurture their babies with their breast milk because mothers couldn't be there or for whatever reason. So for those few people, they came up with the idea that let's take breast milk and let's create a formula and let's recreate it in the lab so it can help those few people, right, in that situation. But what happened? Food industry got involved and said, this is great, now everyone can use it. And it was marketed as the ideal way to feed a baby.
Yeah.
Right? And all of us grew up on formula and that whole generation did. And cut to maybe 18, 20 years later, scientists started seeing trends in entire populations having a severely compromised immunity. And the ones that looked into it found links with that it was those kids that were brought up on formula versus breast milk had massively compromised immunity. And it really made them beg the question as to why, because, you know, you were like, everything that's in breast milk was in this formula. So why is this happening? What was missing? And today, as you look at more imaging methods and you understand the body better, you kind of get more in-depth knowledge of the way the body works. scientists have found that breastfeeding is not actually just a delivery of nutrients to the child, but it's a communication between mother and child. Okay, so if the child is lacking in certain nutrients, that's why it's a contact mechanism. The mother's body makes those nutrients and feeds it through the breast milk.
Wow.
If the mother has had a certain disease in her life, and she has the antibodies for it, it will be passed on to the child through breastfeeding because it detects that this is a need.
Wow.
And if you look at breast milk, it's different morning, afternoon, evening, night. They're different. It's a dynamic.
The composition of it actually changes during. That is so fascinating.
Dynamic communication between a mother and child. That's the purpose of breast milk. Today, that's what we understand from the science that we have. Back then, they understood that, look, breast milk has these nutrients and it has some fats and we can formula it and we can put it into the child. But what happens later? You don't realize how little you know until you try and recreate a nature system, until you realize that you actually missed the whole point.
Yeah.
Basically a summary of everything in science till date. And being a scientist, that's the thing I understand the most, is how much science fails. But food industry and a lot of individuals take science as gospel truth, but it's really not. It's science is what we understand about the workings of the world up until today and how we've interpreted it, based on a very corrupt system of different human beings having more power, so their scientific study gets read first and gets published versus someone who doesn't. Just like any other system, it's a collective knowledge of human beings up until now. So you have to understand how to interpret what the science is trying to say as well.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why I'm very against recreating something we think is there for a particular reason, but actually the reason might be something totally different. So I don't like right now when I look at soil health, and soil health is awful and we're trying to solve all these problems using hydroponics, which I think is a brilliant thing to do, because I've tried hydroponic vegetables and they are delicious, like crunchy, and they have all the nutrients. But I'm just researching food right now, right? And I'm looking at the different ways of making food. And I don't know how this will turn out to be, but it just begs the question. Now you're replacing soil, right, with water. You're feeding nutrients through water. At a time like this, I would stop and ask myself, is there a role that soil has other than passing on nutrients to the plant? And there are many more roles, like which we may never know for the next 100 years. The way soil functions, the reason of its consistency, what other animal dung and manure that kind of helps to move with the nitrogen in the soil. There may be more than what we understand. So before we try and recreate something that we can feed the human body, we really have to stop and think as to what we're possibly missing out on in that recreation. So therefore, answering your question about probiotics, you can get it from nature. If you take out all the probiotics, put it in a pill, are you missing something else? You just think that you want these particular elements that are probiotic, but we don't know. Maybe in the yogurt, for example, having Greek yogurt or fresh homemade yogurt, there's other things that we've labeled probiotics that are really causing the good bacteria to flourish, but maybe there are other things that we don't know of.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm very, very, very against snapshotting where we are and trying to recreate it, unless it's a clinical issue, unless a mother cannot get to her child and you have no other option, fine. Unless somebody is unable to consume full whole nutrition, fine. But what about us who are, but we're getting dependent on little pills and supplements and things that we have food? Why are we, it just has to make sense for the particular reason why it's done.